What's going on, guys? This is the 5 Year Pass podcast with me, Sudi, and this is Sham, and today we'll be previewing the weekend's games and also kind of talking about the midweek fixtures that happened and potentially United's title race. Never thought I'd actually say those words this season. Well, I say that, but I did predict them to come second, but that was a bit of a pipe. I think second, bit of a pipe dream. But I mean, they did the business yesterday, and honestly, it doesn't feel like they came back from 1-0 down. It just felt like a bit of a kind of fuck around at the start, but they played really good football. The three young ones up front, Rashi, Martial, and Greenwood, putting the business away. Yeah. What do you think of the last few days of games before we get into the weekend's game show?
Some really interesting results. Some upsets, like Arsenal getting a draw against Southampton, and then there some really interesting games and some notable results as well. I agree with your thoughts on the United game. I think Sheffield's 2 goals both came from one was an obvious mistake by Henderson. He won't want to watch that again. I do think he could have done a bit better with the second goal, but it was considered it a corner. They do seem to go Lindelof a bit, teams, when they get into the box. So that's something United are going to have to fix. He looks a little vulnerable winning headers, Lindelof, which is more manageable when he's trying to win a header on the edge of the box. But in the box, it becomes an issue. And United's, what really sort of system breakdowns, it was more a blooper and a set piece. The goals looked very good from United. It was an interesting comment. I just saw Ollie after the match saying, Mason, Martial and Marcus haven't really played a lot of football together this season, which I hadn't thought about too much until he actually said it, and then it made a lot of sense. And they were the ones who were up and about when the team was doing really well. Rashford's playing touching on elite in terms of the way he's playing. It was interesting with the goals that United scored, though, particularly the first 2. Sheffield are playing that pressing game. They're not playing the low block that a lot of teams play against United. And maybe because they're at home, they thought they'd have a crack at United. But United's first 2 goals are basically balls over the top, really good passes, really good control by the strikers, and then scoring goals, which are goals that United like to score. They like scoring goals with their front 3 running as hard as they can at the goals, as opposed to flitting around on the edge of the box and trying to wriggle chances through the line of defence against that low block. And it was notable as well that United didn't really have a lot of impact from Bruno Fernandes. Pogba had 2 quite big impacts with the second and third goals, but Bruno was probably noteworthy by his omission from some of those stat lines that you normally see him get in games like this.
I did say that last night watching the game, that it was nice to see. Well, I'd say nice to see. It's nice to see someone else getting it and not Bruno. But that touch by Rashford was a thing of beauty.
Oh, yeah. It was so quick. I had to sort of see it again to go, oh, whoa.
It reminds me of primetime Suarez. Suarez used to do that quite well, receive a ball onto a run. But you could argue that that was harder because Rashford runs quicker. When you run quicker, you're looking at ball feet in front of you. And that's why the shot, his finish wasn't that good. Like, it wasn't a crazy finish, but because the touch was so good, he could just get it away. The keeper probably didn't think he was going.
It beat the keeper for it was an early shot. We've talked about Salah and Mason Greenwood taking early shots. It was the earliness of the shot that caught the keeper out.
And it is something I read as well, where it's only their second game, the 3 of them are started together, and 2 of the 3 of them scored. Somehow Greenwood's not scoring doesn't really worry me. I don't think it worries anyone because it seems like he creates a lot of things, creates a lot of space for the other 2 to score. At the end of the day, if you're winning games and one guy's not scoring, I don't think anyone cares. I thought it was a great game. I don't want to harp on too much on United, I thought I do want to ask you. It's not an analytical question, but it's really insane where United are, the position they're in right now.
I'll answer the question. I just want to say quickly about the front 3. There does need to be a counterbalance. I talked about when they played Seville in the UEFA Cup. If they're all running in a goal, it becomes easier to defend. Mm-hmm. And United, they seem to attack down the left a lot, almost like that Arsenal side under Wenger. It just always seems to come from the left, but you do need that counterpoint on the right, providing width. And that's why there was all this talk about Sancho before the season, just giving him that wider option. Mm-hmm. The one that ends up there, which is mostly going to be Mason Greenwood, but occasionally Rashford, does need to sacrifice in order to stretch the defense and create that space. And it does mean that he's not the first guy that they'll go to. They'll go for the center striker and the one on the left who's cutting in, who sort of hangs around with Pogba, gets into that area. Bruno gets into that area. So if you get a guy wide, he creates opportunities for the others by making those runs. A bit like Rooney with Ronaldo. He'd run selflessly down channels to give space for Ronaldo. It's kind of like that. Not quite the same, but comparable. So you're not going to have all three score every game. It's unrealistic. But the fact that he's doing it and creating for the others is a really good sign. Yeah, in regards to United's performance, the beginning of the season, they were winning in the Champions League and not doing so well in the league, and we're all kind of worried. And now they are the form team in the league. They've won 4 of the last 5. I believe it's 5 of the last 6, with the draw against City being the only non-win. 7 wins, 2 draws, 3 losses. The goal difference is terrible considering those results, but that's mainly the result of that Tottenham game.
+3 at the minute, am I right to say that?
Yeah, I mean, if the Tottenham game didn't happen, there'd be +8, which would be 4th best goal difference in the league, which is if that Tottenham game didn't exist. But those things happen. I'd like to see them score more goals. I think they will with the front 3 firing on all cylinders. And obviously, you take out that Tottenham game, that defensive record looks quite different. It'd be about a goal a game if they didn't have that Tottenham game and even the Palace game. But you could say that about any team taking out their worst results. It's crazy to think that, and we harp on a lot about the game in hand, but if they win it, they're second. And that's very notable. They win it, they're 2 points off top. That's not something that a lot of United fans would have thought at the beginning of the season, with the short turnaround, with teams like teams like Tottenham coming along, Chelsea coming along, Leicester playing at that same sort of level last season. The Warriors at United would slip to 5th, 6th, 7th, and they're 6th now. But because it's so tight, they'd be second if they win that game against Burnley. You can see with Ollie some of the things he's saying in the presser. It's like, we should be winning games like this, and trying to build the team up for a title challenge. It's interesting that Liverpool have this great home record and terrible away record, and United are the other way around, but they're about 2 points off each other, and they're playing each other twice very shortly. So those games become very big. It's surprising in the sense that United have got similar plays to last season. There's not really, I can't really think, apart from Cavani, Cavani and Van der Beek are not first 11 players that they've added. And to think that they've got the Atalanta player coming in.
And Tellers.
And Tellers, Tellers has not played a lot. He's a first-team player, but he's not played a lot because of various reasons. And then they've got the Atalanta fella coming in January, who I think is a right winger, will add a lot to this team. It will allow Mason to play more up front as well. Allow Mason to become that extra striker United needs, as opposed to being plonked on the right wing. Is it Traore? I think his name is.
It's Traore, Diallo, something like that.
Yeah, Diallo. Yeah. So I think that, given that, the thing with United is, we said last season, their first 11 or 12 were very, very good. They could play anybody on their day, and that's why they have a great record against top 6 sides. They were dropping points against teams below that. So they haven't really lost anyone. They've added, you need a first team squad of 15 or 16 players. So if they have the first 11 there, they've added Cavani, Van der Beek, and Tellez. Fred and McTominay are starting to play better. They had a good last seasons, but they were not used well after the COVID break. They were not used at all, really.
Yeah.
So you've suddenly gone from United having only 11 players to rely on to suddenly having 16 and maybe 17 with the Diallo. I count Tuanzebe. I don't know if Ollie does, which frustrates me a lot, actually. I think Lindelof, I don't see him being a centre-back on a title-winning side. But they've gone from having just that 11 to suddenly looking like a squad. 16, 17, 18 players is actually pretty good for a title push. There's obviously the deadwood that's there, guys like Lingard and Mata and Jones, who are not getting money but no game time. But the reality is United have built a pretty strong 14, 15, out to 18 type players. So the thing is, they kind of have to realize that. They kind of have to play it at that level. But on paper, it actually looks a lot better than it did 4 months ago.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, typically a title winning side gets you need about 20, 21, 25 players. They're on the cusp of something. I wouldn't say great. They're on the cusp of something that could push them to be a great team. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Well, I just want to.
Let's not get ahead.
I just want to touch on the Chelsea game really quickly. we said, and I think I feel like we said this very kind of blatantly. We said this is a big game for Chelsea because they do these kind of sawtooth patterns up and down, up and down. They so they just lost to
Wolves way.
Wolves, yeah. 91st minute goal against a Wolves side that they've lost Jimenez, they've lost Yota, and they've lost it's not coming to me now, but they've lost 3 big players. I mean, we're not going to rule anyone out of anything right now, but they're just not, Havertz and Werner, they're just not, they're not finding their feet. And I know we want to get to this weekend's game, but I thought it was an interesting point that Chelsea have just kind of dropped off a touch than what they were, let's say, a month ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they'd won their last 2, which are very winnable games, they would be top of the table. So they're big losses for Chelsea. They're 7th now. It shows how close it is, but still, yeah, we did make that point. And I did make a point about Wolves as well, that they were playing good football without necessarily showing the intent. And the difference between that for me is Barca 2011 and Barca 2012. The 2011 team had a lot of intent. The 2012 team was still playing the same football, but in a much more passive way. And Wolves will kind of like the 2012 Barca team throughout a lot of the season, just without that kick, It's like like playing without chili, for example, like a dish without chili. They've suddenly got their chili back. They got a bit of heat about them, and they took Chelsea on. Ain't good on them. It was a great result. Chelsea do still need to, they still need to figure out how to get all these stars in the team. Getting Havertz, I think, is the issue. They seem to actually play quite well without him. I think the combination of Ziyech and Werner seems to work. And then you've got guys like Pulisic and Abraham and all that they can work around, and they've got a strong base in midfield. Havertz was actually out of the team when they're on that run. And the issue is how to accommodate him. He just seems a bit too slight, and he seems to be slightly out of position playing as that free 8. He'd probably do better as a winger in like a 4-2-3-1 or even as a 10 in a 4-2-3-1. So there's a difference between being that 10 and being the free 8. And he's got to get his head around that. And if Chelsea want to win the title, he's got to get his head around that fairly quick.
When you bring a player in of his quality, I think he costs about 70, 80 million. That's going to, how much you're going to buy world-class young talent. It's interesting that you have conversations around him and Pogba where you're like, what's his best position? I've always wondered that. I've always wondered why. There's 2 things to that. Firstly is why aren't you deciding that before you bring in these 5 or 6 quality players? The second thing I wonder is, it's not about the money, like, oh, you get paid this much, you should be able to play. It's more like you should be able to, someone of Havertz's ilk, you should be able to play 8-10 wing, false 9 up front with decent competency. Now, I'm not saying he's not a good player. I think he will become a fantastic player. I just think the issue right now is he reminds me of that De Gea build when De Gea first came. He's just so small. He's quite tall, and you're quite tall, you're quite small. That center of gravity, you tend to fall off the ball, you get knocked off the ball a lot easier. That's why he does well in Europe. If you watch the European fixtures, he does, even when he's playing for Leverkusen. He's a very good player in Europe. But it'll just take him a bit of time, and I've no doubt that he has the kind of focus and discipline. He's that sort of guy. I think I told you that story when the interview came over, and he was teaching the interview a little bit of like Beethoven and the piano, something that a very complicated piece. So he's a very intelligent guy by nature. So I think even if he doesn't live up to his price tag this season, I have no doubt that he'll build upon the things he's done wrong this season and bring it into next season. Chelsea look. Go on, sorry.
There's still a long way to go for this season for him to have a good season. He can still have a good season, but yeah, he was off. He was off against Wolves. Yeah.
And the issue with Chelsea now, they're looking at this weekend against West Ham. That's a tricky fixture, man.
West Ham are just behind them on the table.
Yeah, tricky fixture. Shall we get into these weekend's games, or do you have any kind of last?
Well,
I
thought we could have a chat about Liverpool. I thought that was a massive.
Oh, sorry, absolutely.
Liverpool.
No.
The top of the table clash.
Yeah, no, the total domination by Liverpool, if you ask me. Mourinho had 11 passes in the first half, something like that. 11 completed passes.
Mourinho?
Something like that. I can't remember. I read the stat. I'm just talking shit, but I think Mourinho saying the better team lost.
I do think that Tottenham had some pretty good chances in the second half and could have won that game. But the reality is that a large amount of that game was played on Liverpool's terms. And we've said about Liverpool several times, they just don't quite seem to have that relentlessness that they had last season. Well, they had it against
they
Tottenham.
fucking had it, man.
They had it.
Yeah.
They deliberately played. They did rather than it was a tactical thing. Rather than playing right up on the halfway line and leaving a lot of space behind and pressing, they used the fact that Tottenham don't have a lot of speed in midfield to sort of play. You could see them lining up just behind the defensive side of the centre circle and not allowing Tottenham to get over the top. And so there were a few times when it happened, and that's where Tottenham were the most productive. But you could see them deliberately setting up to stop that weapon of Tottenham's, that quick release and the player running over the top. And you're not going to stop, someone like Son once he gets past the last defender, which is what happened for that goal.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just going to say
they were never going to stop him. But they deliberately set up to stop that. It was really good tactical display by Liverpool. I do think Tottenham had better chances to win the game, but I think that Liverpool played much more of the game on their own terms and deservedly won that game. And that's the type of game you win when you look back at the end of the season and go, that was a defining game and a title-winning side. I do think that for all of Liverpool's injury issues, the fact that they've had fairly tough games in the last few weeks, they seem to the fact that they've now pulled away, they pretty much said, catch me if you can. It was a very important performance from Liverpool.
I believe they do have a considerably easy run the next 2 or 3 games and over Christmas. Yeah, so it's Palace, tricky, West Brom, Newcastle, and this is where they could peel off. It's a good time to play. It's a good time to play a lot of easier teams with shorter turnarounds, given their injury issues. If they were playing 5 games against United, City, Chelsea, and all that, you'd be going, oh, okay, there's a bit of a problem. But if there's a good time for them to have 6 games in 15 days or whatever it is, it probably is now against some of those easier teams. And being able, trying to win games easy and sort of go down a gear and control the game without necessarily going at full ball. So it's a good time for them to really kick on. The question mark obviously is with the players out, can they do it? But they've done it so far this season. Why can't they keep doing it? Just special mention. I thought what's his name? Nico Williams played last night. The centre back, the guy that kind of looks like Van Dijk. He's kind of a scrawny version of Van Dijk. Van Dijk light. It's interesting, man. You see, when United, like I always say, when United had this last kind of, this 6-7 year slump they've had, people 7 years now. The positives that have come out of it is Rashford, Martial, Greenwood, Jesse Lingard for a few years, Brandon Williams, getting these young guys through the academy. De Gea becoming the best keeper in the world at one stage. Probably about 3 or 4 years, he was by far the best. Liverpool, with this Van Dijk injury, have gone and tested players, have tested their midfield, have gone and tweaked things and gone like, what if you play like this? What if you play like this? And I got to say, man, Klopp, Liverpool, the players have filled in. They've all come out, generally speaking, have come out of this test, this kind of hypothesis. You come up with a hypothesis like, well, what if I played Nico here? What if I drop Hendo back? What if I pushed him forward? Because Van Dijk's not there, he can play around with things. And because they're so good up front, it doesn't, it can compensate for that. But so 2 nights ago against Spurs, it wasn't a test. It was kind of putting all the little tests together, all the little trials that they've done. And that's probably the best situation they have right now. And I thought they played superbly. I think my brother actually said he thought Spurs played like, okay, I didn't think Spurs played well at all. I thought they were not in the game. A couple of chances, but there was only going to be one winner.
Yeah. I wouldn't have been surprised if that game ended up being a draw. It looked like it being a draw all the way until Firmino scored. Yeah. But I don't think Tottenham ever looked like they were going to win that game.
Yeah.
Just on your point about Liverpool, Klopp did say towards the end of last season that he sort of implied that they were not going to go very heavily into the market and they were going to rely on some of that youth to come through. So he obviously saw something that we hadn't seen. If you can get one squad player, and then when I say squad player, I'm talking about a Brandon Williams level player or a John O'Shea level player. If you can get one of those into the first team every season, you're actually doing pretty well as a youth academy. Liverpool have got Williams in. They've got that young keeper who I think's past Adrian now. And I forgot his name, sorry, from your neck of the woods. And and Jones as well. Jones looks really good. I rate him. I don't think he'll ever be Liverpool's best midfielder, but I think he's the type of player I think will play at the level of the guys around him. And he will add through being a little different, through adding his pace and verve. And he seems Liverpool's midfielders last season, there wasn't really any sort of point of difference in terms of the way that they played. I think he offers something slightly different in terms of his ability to sort of run at defenders and create space and all of that. So he's a really good addition to that squad.
I call it.
I don't think he'll win the Golden Ball, but I think he's a good player.
I call it the Darren Fletcher dilemma, where Darren Fletcher's not a good player. He just plays well.
Yes.
You know what I'm trying to say?
I like that.
He's not a good player. He's not
I
that
know
good.
100%.
He just plays really well.
100% what you're saying. Yeah. I remember playing in when I played my football university. We had this.
So go on.
We had this guy when I played football university. We had this guy. He could play either right or center midfielder. Really nice guy. I think he was a doctor by profession. He was the clumsiest guy I've ever played football with. Like the ball would he'd try and trap it with his knee to hit him in the head and all this sort of thing. But every time he got the ball, he'd do something quite decisive with it. I remember him threading he clumsily trap it, fall over it, and then just throw a beautiful through ball through. Like he was just clumsy as fuck, but he was he just played well, you know. You expected him to not do something, and he'd do something. Like it was really.
He's not a good player. He just played well.
He's not a good player. He just played well. But he plays well all the time.
And that's what I think. People like Curtis Jones and like obviously Darren Fletcher, they are good players, but they'll never be seen as good players. They just be seen as players who play well. John O'Shea, man. People forget that John O'Shea, like an Irish boy from fucking the middle of nowhere, comes to United, wins the Champions League, 5 Premier League, 6 Premier Leagues. Like that's not a player who plays well. That's a good player.
Yeah,
you know.
Sometimes with youth players, because they don't have a price tag, people don't rate them. You know?
Yeah. It's hard to get your mind across the fact that some players are not bought; they're just made at the club. Yeah. 1 second.
Just about Leeds, but yeah.
So So just we just want to touch on Leeds, I guess. 5-3, organized chaos at its best again. They got United on the weekend, but they, good win. You can never discount. Leeds win is never boring, and Leeds loss is never boring as well. What do you think about that?
And the game was there to be won. You know, like they really had to. They really had to shake. Newcastle took the lead. And then Leeds got 2-1 up, and then Newcastle scored again with 25 minutes left. And you're kind of like, well, what's this team got? What are Leeds made of? Newcastle would have been ahead of them on the table with a game in hand if the score stayed the same. But Leeds just went out and scored 3 goals and some really good goals as well. The effect of what Bielsa does, it was shown in that extra final push. His teams always seem to have that final push in them. And it'll be interesting to see how they go in the festive period, playing the style that they play. But really good win by Leeds, very noteworthy. Lifts them clear of Arsenal.
Yeah, right. So, any closing thoughts on the midweek fixtures? We can wrap it up.
Not really. Just that Liverpool, like I said before, Liverpool we've talked a bit about Chelsea and City and Tottenham and some teams that might have a chance. Liverpool basically thrown the gauntlet down this weekend, I think.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if anyone can catch some team. I'm sure there's some teams that will rate themselves, but Liverpool are the defending champions. They play with a swagger. They're 3 points clear. They have laid down the gauntlet to take on the league.
I'll just say it's just nice to see. It's hard for me to contain the kind of positivity I have as a United fan right now, and it's nice to see that we're on top of City very convincingly. 3 points. Just looking at the table now, 3 points. I don't have much hope that we're gonna win that game in hand. We've never seemed to take things by the neck when we have to. But there's a lot of positivity.
It's at Burnley, so yay, but it's at home, so no.
Draw. Anyway, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. We are the 5-Yard Pass. We'll be doing a preview weekend for the video. Preview video for the weekend as well. So, like I said, don't forget to like and subscribe. We are the 5-Yard Pass. Keep football simple as always.
Keep passing, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.